Honor to welcome you to the World Economic Forum's annual meeting in Davos. With us are 3,000 participants from 130 countries, including a record level of political leaders, more than 400 political leaders, 65 heads of state and government, and 850 global CEOs and chairs. And in addition, we have the young global leaders, the shapers, the social entrepreneurs, academics, 10 Nobel laureates, also labor leaders and faith leaders. That makes us a unique multi-cultural village in Davos. And these are historic numbers for our annual meeting. We are convening at such a consequential moment for the world, when geopolitical developments are fast-moving, when long-standing trade and economic architectures are being redrawn, and when technological forces are reshaping our industries and societies. We are standing at the start of a new reality, the contours of which are still to be defined. But hopefully it is not the jungle growing back. That is why also the deliberations and dialogues we make here in Davos will shape what comes next. Countries and companies are finding new ways to work with one another, finding the way like water to advance common agendas even in more uncertain times. Last year when we met in Davos, there was a fear that we would be facing a decade of slow growth, like we had in the 1970s. Even with the very difficult geopolitical backdrop, maybe the most difficult one since 1945, we are seeing sustained economic growth. The IMF numbers that came showed 3.3% expected economic growth this year. And we are also seeing that trade is growing. Not 5–6% as in the past, but still growing 3%. When you read the media, you feel that things are contracting. But even more important, why are we less concerned about a decade of slow growth moving forward? It is because of the new technologies. Last year, $1.5 trillion was invested in the new technologies. And if we get it right, the new technologies can be the new driver of growth for decades to come. So maybe we can see decades where we see increased growth, and we can deal then also with the debt level that is the highest since 1945. The foundation of moving forward has to build on cooperation and dialogue. It is the only way to identify shared interests and chart pathways forward together. This is why the theme of this year's annual meeting is the spirit of dialogue. It is really my hope that the week ahead and the year ahead will chart collaborative pathways forward for business and government, and shape a more prosperous and secure era. I'm now pleased to introduce the co-chair of the World Economic Forum and chair and CEO of BlackRock, Larry Fink. Welcome, Larry.
Good morning, everyone. And it's a great welcome to be a part of this annual meeting at the World Economic Forum, which is the strongest session that we're going to be ever having in our 56-year history. This week, as Borga suggested, 850 CEOs and chairs are here. 65 heads of state representing governments, representing actually 40% of the world's population. And alongside, we have some of the world's most innovative entrepreneurs, some of the world's most innovative startups, and we have some of the most impactful civil society and NGO representatives. In fact, we believe that outside the United Nations, this is the largest gathering of global leadership of the post-COVID period of time. So thank you for being a part of that. But now we have a harder question to ask all of us. What do we do about it? And will anyone outside this room care what we're doing here? Because if we're honest, for many people, this meeting feels out of step with the moment. We hear all about the elites. And how does that play out in an age of populism? How does an established institution make a difference in an era of deep institutional mistrust? And there's some truth to the critique. I believe in this forum for a long time. I certainly wouldn't be leading this if I didn't believe that we can change and make the world better. But it's also obvious that the world now places far less trust in us to help shape what comes next. If the World Economic Forum is going to be useful going forward, it has to regain that trust. And there are some very obvious ways that we can improve for ourselves and hopefully for the world. We need to make sure that we widen who gets a voice in these conversations over the coming week. We have to be a lot more transparent and more engaged with people who don't feel represented in rooms like this. And because this is the World Economic Forum, to be more precise about what does it mean about economic success. Prosperity just isn't the growth in the aggregate. It's not just GDP. It can't be measured by GDP or market caps of companies. It has to be judged by many people who see it, who can touch it, can feel it, and can build their own future on it. That, in my view, is the strongest critique of the last economic era. Since the fall of the Berlin Wall, more wealth has been created than in any time prior in human history. But in advanced economies, that wealth has accrued to a far narrower share of people than any healthy society can ultimately sustain. Now we're in the era of AI, which we're going to talk about a lot in this week. And are we going to replay the same pattern? Early gains are flowing to the owners of models, owners of data, and owners of infrastructure. The open question, what happens to everyone else? If AI does to white-collar work that globalization did to blue-collar workers, we need to confront that today directly. It is not about the future. The future is now. Now with the abstractions about the jobs of tomorrow, but with a credible plan for broad participation in these gains. This is going to be the test. Capitalism can evolve to turn more people into owners of growth instead of spectators watching it happen. And that kind of change is truly hard, especially in a world of competing ideologies and assumptions about how the system should work. Which brings me to the second way Davos can change who gets invited to these conversations. This forum cannot be an echo chamber, and we should want panels where everyone doesn't always agree. We need panels where we can have true conversations maybe some overt disagreements. But through that, we could have a deeper conversation. And then we could have maybe deeper understanding of each other's views. You could already see the shift in who is here this year. That doesn't mean the goal of everyone to leave having convince themselves that they're right. The objective over the week is not agreement. It's understanding. It's sitting with people who disagree with you, taking their arguments seriously, their viewpoints seriously, and being willing to admit they might be right, or they might have something that'll help you evolve your opinions better. And there's a deeper challenge. Many of the people most affected by what we talk about here will never come to this conference. That's the central tension of this forum. Davos is an elite gathering trying to shape a world that belongs to everyone. That is why this year's theme is the spirit of dialogue, because dialogue is the only way a room like this can earn the legitimacy to shape ideas for people who aren't in the room. And besides, the world needs some more good faith conversations with people who don't typically talk to one another. I think that most people, at least intellectually, know that finding a common ground with a stranger is a hopeful thing. It restores your faith in humanity a bit. But how often does it actually happen? Hopefully a little more happens now. But how often can we make it happen? Because dialogue, especially the listening half of dialogue, is what the World Economic Forum needs in going forward. We need more of it. For 56 years, the World Economic Forum has been synonymous with Davos. And that's likely to remain true for a long while. But you should also see the World Economic Forum start doing something new, showing up and listening in places where the modern world is actually being built. Davos, yes, but also places like Detroit and Dublin, or cities like Jakarta or Buenos Aires. We need the mountain to visit everyone, to be a part of everyone's life. So in fact, that's why I agreed to take on this role after Klaus Schwab, whose more than a half-century of work, together with an extraordinary, dedicated group of men and women at the World Economic Forum, made this gathering possible. There was an opportunity to make this forum more transparent, and I thought this was the surest way to rebuild trust. When people can see in the room about the debates, about the participation, and about the conversations, and maybe a lot more understanding. That approach may fail in other gatherings. In this one, it's going to work. Because for all the caricatures of this forum, the people who come here, the people I know, aren't here to congratulate themselves, aren't here to pat themselves on the back. They're not here to protect their own comforts. The people I know are here for something bigger than themselves, bigger than their organizations that they represent. I believe an economic progress should be shared. All of us at the forum believe that economic success should be shared. And we believe institutions like the World Economic Forum still matters in making things happen. So let's remember this during the week about real conversations. Let us all commit to listen, to learn, to understand. And if we can all do that, we will all be better for that. Thank you. And now my co-chair.
Thank you, Larry, for that very powerful message at the opening of our annual meeting. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our other co-chair, Andrea Hoffmann, and I would also like to use this opportunity to thank both of the co-chairs for their leadership during the last three-quarters of a year. Andrea Hoffmann, you know Andrea, many of you, he's our co-chair, but also the vice chair of Roche. So, Andrea, the floor is yours.
Your Majesties, Excellencies, distinguished forum partners, ladies and gentlemen, it is now also my turn to welcome you here in this meeting placed under the spirit of dialogue. At a time when science confirms that humanity has already transgressed 7 of the 9 planetary boundaries, as highlighted in a planetary health check in September 25 from the Potsdam Institute, the challenge before us is no longer one of just awareness, but of action, making the need for collective responsibility, decisive leadership and meaningful dialogue more urgent than ever, as Larry just underlined. For over half a century, leaders from across the globe have regularly gathered here in Davos, in Switzerland, to confront the defining challenges of our time. This was done as a community bound by shared responsibility for our collective future. This tradition, born from conviction that the great questions facing humanity demand dialogue against their differences, has never been more vital than it is today. At a moment when the world confronts profound questions about growth, about innovation, about technological transformation, and about our planet's future. At a moment where we need spaces where diverse voices can be heard, where we need just and safe places where diverse voices can be heard. At a moment where complexity must be examined from multiple perspectives so that we gain the insights we desperately need. This is why the World Economic Forum exists. Since 56 years, it is the international organization for public-private cooperation. A space where government, businesses and civil society come together and generate the insights that emerge when different worldviews actively illuminate one another. And this matters because in a world that feels increasingly divided, progress depends on our ability to listen and engage across differences. Could I ask my wife to give me the third page, which I left there? As you can see, you can be prepared, but also a bit clumsy in delivery. Sorry about that. This is why our gathering... This is why our gathering takes place here, in Switzerland, a nation whose tradition and commitment to dialogue reflects the very spirit we seek to embody. Davos has over so many years almost become, as I said before, a synonym for the World Economic Forum. It is therefore a particular pleasure for me to welcome Monsieur Guy Parmelin, President of the Swiss Confederation, as the opening speaker here in Davos. Bonjour, Monsieur le Président de la Confédération. Je vais vous demander de venir sur scène. Merci beaucoup. Merci d'avoir accepté de partager vos réflexions avec nous. Federal Councillor Guy Parmelin has been a member of the Swiss Federal Council for over 20 years. He initially led the Federal Department of Defense, Civil Protection and Sport, and since 2019 has headed the Federal Department of Economic Affairs, Education and Research. Mr. President, when you were inaugurated as President by the Swiss Parliament last December, you chose to speak about dialogue. At a time of uncertainty and tension, you reminded Parliament that Switzerland's diversity is not something that sustains itself automatically. It only becomes a strength if we truly listen to one another, if we resist the temptation to dismiss different views simply because they come from another political camp. You emphasized that societies do not move forward through value judgment on others, but through respect for those who think differently. Diverging opinions, you argued, are not an obstacle, but a driver of progress and a source of genuine innovation. This understanding of dialogue, rooted in listening, proximity, respect, and a shared sense of responsibility and humanity, is one that deeply resonates here in Davos. It also reflects the value of the World Economic Forum. Talk and listen to each other, embrace other options, and act in a collective interest. The spirit of dialogue. Before inviting the President to speak to us, allow me also to express our deepest gratitude to the Swiss government, to the Swiss Parliament, to the Canton of Graubünden, to the Swiss Army, and to the police. A special thank you goes to the community of Davos and Klosters for their decades of exceptional hospitality and partnership. And above all, our thanks go to the people of these communities whose openness and commitment truly embodies the spirit of Davos and the spirit of Switzerland. Your Majesties, Excellency, distinguished foreign partners, ladies and gentlemen, it is a particular pleasure to invite now le Président de la Confédération Suisse, Guy Parmelin, to address us. Thank you very much, Guy. The floor is yours.
Je vais parler français. Monsieur Hoffmann, Monsieur Fink, Monsieur Brende, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, en ma qualité de président de la Confédération suisse, je suis particulièrement heureux de pouvoir accueillir autant de chefs d'État à cette rencontre annuelle du Forum économique mondial. Une telle affluence prend un sens particulier en cette année qui a commencé tragiquement pour notre pays. Aussi, la Suisse tient à remercier tous les pays concernés du soutien et de la solidarité qu'ils nous ont témoigné lors du drame de Crans-Montana. Il est impressionnant de constater qu'une catastrophe peut mobiliser les énergies, renforcer la cohésion internationale et nous unir au-delà de l'adversité. Et cette unité doit cependant transcender les événements particuliers, aussi dramatiques soient-ils. Elle doit imprégner dans le temps les relations entre nos pays, car ce n'est qu'ensemble que nous pourrons trouver des solutions solides aux grands défis de notre époque. L'année 2025 en a révélé un certain nombre. Elle a éprouvé des secousses géopolitiques, économiques et numériques à l'échelle planétaire. Et ces changements sont perceptibles partout. Ils infusent dans notre quotidien, et cela jusqu'au Forum économique mondial, pour lequel l'année écoulée n'a pas été de tout repos. La présente édition et ses nombreuses autres de marque attestent néanmoins l'importance de la résilience et du dialogue dans l'assise de nos institutions et de leur capacité à faire face. L'année 2026 esquissée laisse déjà entrevoir les bouleversements à venir et les foyers de crise aussi. Aux situations difficiles de l'Ukraine, de Gaza et du Soudan sont venues s'ajouter celles du Venezuela et de l'Iran, pour ne citer que celles-ci. En matière de politique économique, le protectionnisme s'est renforcé à l'échelle mondiale. De plus, les nombreuses questions en suspens concernant le rôle et le contrôle de l'intelligence artificielle demeurent sans réponse. Nous ne nous en étonnerons pas, pour l'homme, l'immobilisme n'est pas une option. Ou pour le dire avec Henri Bergson, exister consiste à changer. Et cette année sera ainsi marquée par des avancées technologiques aussi bien que par des interrogations à la fois économiques et sécuritaires. L'essor fulgurant de l'intelligence artificielle est ainsi appelé à transformer profondément le visage de notre société. Les changements qu'elle impose sont perceptibles à chaque instant dans tous les secteurs de la vie humaine, dans l'économie, dans l'administration, dans notre vie privée. Ils modifient notre façon de travailler, de communiquer, de prendre des décisions. Et à ce titre, ils sont à la fois des risques et des opportunités, la transformation numérique véhiculant aussi bien les dangers de la cybercriminalité, de la désinformation, que les perspectives enthousiasmantes, en particulier dans le domaine de la santé. La technologie n'est jamais bonne ou mauvaise en soi, elle est ce qu'on en fait. Et pour s'en faire une alliée positive, il faut que ses utilisateurs aient le sens des responsabilités. Mais les changements ne sont pas qu'affaire de fulgurance. En tant que ministre de l'économie, formé à l'école de la Terre, je suis bien placé pour expliquer que le succès durable dépend d'une planification précoce et prévoyante. Et cette règle, elle est valable dans de nombreux autres secteurs où les investissements ne génèrent pas des revenus immédiats. Et je pense notamment à la recherche dont je suis également le ministre de tutelle. La réflexion à long terme, elle est nécessaire en toutes circonstances. Elle est aussi dans les tempêtes. Elle doit notamment nous aider à forger le progrès sur le feu de nos valeurs fondamentales sans oublier leur sens ni leur rôle. Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, la Suisse tire sa force notamment de la constance qui contribue à garantir la stabilité politique. La constance n'est pas source d'immobilisme, elle est au contraire le fondement de ce progrès. Notre pays a la chance de disposer d'un excellent système de formation et de recherche dont la capacité d'innovation est reconnue bien au-delà de nos frontières. Dotée au surplus d'une économie ouverte tournée vers l'exportation, la Suisse fait partie intégrante de l'économie mondiale. Et le Conseil fédéral s'engage avec vigueur pour que notre pays puisse continuer de participer avec succès à la vitalité de cette économie. L'une de nos priorités en ce moment est de pouvoir stabiliser et développer nos relations avec nos partenaires les plus fidèles et les plus significatifs. Et la Suisse souhaite par ailleurs poursuivre la diversification de ses relations internationales, notamment dans les domaines commerciaux et scientifiques. Même durant la période actuelle, encline au protectionnisme, nous croyons au succès du libre-échange et nous voulons développer notre réseau d'accords en la matière. Et pour y parvenir, il faut pouvoir mener des négociations d'égal à égal qui donnent de bons résultats pour le bien de toutes les parties. Des accords de ce type, réciproquement avantageux, ne tombent pas du ciel. Mais nous avons la capacité de les construire pas à pas. Pour ce faire, les contacts personnels et la volonté de dialogue sont indispensables. Nous en disposons. Le Forum économique mondial concourt à ce dialogue depuis toujours et je le remercie de nous offrir encore cette année en Suisse, de surcroît, cette extraordinaire plateforme internationale d'échange. La Suisse est au diapason. En tant que pays neutre, elle est en mesure et désireuse d'assumer ses responsabilités en faveur d'un ordre international fondé sur des règles, sur les droits de l'homme et la liberté du commerce. Ces valeurs nous caractérisent depuis toujours. Cette année, la Suisse assume une tâche particulièrement exigeante en présidant l'Organisation pour la sécurité et la coopération en Europe. Mais la force diplomatique de notre pays réside également dans sa pratique reconnue des bons offices, à laquelle la Genève internationale offre une scène à la mesure des enjeux en présence. Il faut savoir la Suisse toujours disponible à cet égard. Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, nos différentes positions nous offrent des perspectives imprenables sur l'évolution de notre monde et sur les dangers qui le guettent. Elles nous offrent aussi la hauteur de vue et les liens nécessaires pour que ces changements puissent être abordés avec les moyens adéquats et de façon concertée. Société, sciences, économie et politique doivent en effet interagir dans une logique de partenariat, sans quoi les problèmes ne pourront être abordés que de façon partielle et imparfaite. J'ajoute qu'il faut savoir faire preuve de courage pour s'investir dans une tâche de cette ampleur avec l'ambition de la mener à bien. Le courage d'innover, le courage de rester fidèle à ses valeurs, le courage de demander assistance ou conseil si nécessaire, le courage enfin de s'engager dans la durée comme le fait le vigneron face au rythme lent et implacable de la nature. Nous verrons ce que l'intelligence artificielle a à nous offrir. Nous serons certainement encore stupéfaits, peut-être éblouis, mais ce qu'elle ne parviendra jamais à faire, c'est à fédérer les cœurs ou à attirer les mains secourables comme nous l'avons vécu au début de cette année en Valais. La solidarité et l'humanité ne font pas partie du vocabulaire digital. Je veux y voir un heureux présage pour l'avenir Je vous remercie de votre attention.
Thank you so much, Mr. President, and also on behalf of the World Economic Forum, we send our warmest thoughts and condolences to the people affected by the tragic fire in Crown Montana. Ladies and gentlemen, it is really my great honor to welcome one of the most influential and respected leaders on the global stage today. President Ursula von der Leyen, a stateswoman whose leadership has helped define and shape Europe's direction in an era of historic uncertainty. Madam President, you have guided the European Union with clarity, resolve, and strong sense of purpose through some of the most demanding moments in history. Under your leadership, the European Commission has advanced a bold agenda for strengthening Europe's competitiveness with upholding its core values. As President of the European Commission, you have championed a Europe that is competitive yet fair, open yet resilient. On the global stage, you have been a clear and consistent voice for multilateral cooperation, support for Ukraine, and a rules-based international order. At a time when leadership is tested not only by crisis, but by choices made for the future, your voice offers both direction and reassurance. Please join me in welcoming President von der Leyen. Madam President, the floor is yours.
President Brende, dear Volker, thank you very much for the warm welcome. Your Majesties, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, indeed, it is now 56 years since the first meeting here in Davos. And the idea of the founder, Klaus Schwab, was to create a platform to discuss the issues and the ideas of the day. Of course, the world has transformed completely since 1971. But the original idea of Davos has remained, as we just have heard in the speeches. So I was delighted that you have gone back to your roots with this year's theme, a spirit of dialogue. Because this spirit is all the more important in a world that is more fractured and more fractious than ever. 1971 was the year of the so-called Nixon shock and the decision to delink the US dollar from gold. In an instant, the foundations of the Bretton Woods system and the entire global economic order set up after the war effectively collapsed. But it also had two major effects. It inadvertently created the conditions for what would become a truly global order, and it provided a sharp lesson for Europe and on the need to strengthen its economic and political power. It was a warning to reduce our dependencies, in this case on a foreign currency. The world may be very different today, without any question, but I believe the lesson is very much the same. That geopolitical shocks can and must serve as an opportunity for Europe. And in my view, the seismic change we are going through today is an opportunity, in fact, a necessity, to build a new form of European independence. And this need is neither new nor a reaction to recent events. It has been a structural imperative for far longer. So when I used this term, European independence, around a year ago, I was surprised at the skeptical reactions. But less than 1 year on, there's now a real consensus around this. The sheer speed and almost unthinkable scale of the change have driven this, but the underlying imperative is still the same. The good news is we acted immediately, whether on energy or raw materials, defense or digital, we're moving fast. But the truth is also that we will only be able to capitalize on this opportunity if we recognize that this change is permanent. Of course, nostalgia is part of our human story, but nostalgia will not bring back the old order. And playing for time and hoping for things to revert soon will not fix the structural dependencies we have. So my point is, if this change is permanent, then Europe must change permanently too. It is time to seize this opportunity and build a new independent Europe. And ladies and gentlemen, this new Europe is already emerging. On Saturday, I was in Asunción, in Paraguay, to sign the EU-Mercosur trade agreement. It was a breakthrough after 25 years of negotiations. And with it, the European Union and Latin America have created the largest free trade zone in the world, a market worth over 20% of global GDP, 31 countries with over 700 million consumers aligned with the Paris Agreement. So this agreement sends a powerful message to the world that we are choosing fair trade over tariffs, partnership over isolation, sustainability over exploitation, and that we are serious about de-risking our economies and diversifying our supply chains. And that will not stop in Latin America. Last year, we reached new agreements with Mexico, Indonesia and Switzerland, our host country. We're working on a new free trade agreement with Australia. We are also advancing with the Philippines, Thailand, Malaysia, the United Arab Emirates, and more. And right after Davos, the next weekend, I will travel to India. There's still work to do, but we are on the cusp of a historic trade agreement. Indeed, some call it the mother of all deals. One that would create a market of 2 billion people, accounting for almost a quarter of global GDP. And crucially, that would provide a first-mover advantage for Europe with one of the world's fastest-growing and most dynamic continents. Europe wants to do business with the growth centers of today and the economic powerhouses of this century, from Latin America to the Indo-Pacific and far beyond. Europe will always choose the world, and the world is ready to choose Europe. And ladies and gentlemen, this reality also reflects the fact that Europe has all the assets it needs to attract investment. The savings, the skills, the innovation with our AI factories and gigafactories and the applications that are necessary, AI first. What we need now is to mobilize collectively these assets to their full potential and to focus on the essential. So focal point number one is to create a conducive and predictable regulatory environment. We live in an age where capital and data can cross Europe in a second, and business must be able to move just as freely. But as things stand, too many companies have to look abroad to grow and scale up, partly because they face the new set of rules every time they expand into a new member state. So while on paper the market is of 450 million Europeans open to them, it is far more complicated in reality. And that acts as a handbrake on the growth and profit potential of companies. So this is why we need a new approach. We will soon put forward our 28th regime. The ultimate aim is to create a new, truly European company structure. We call it EU Inc., with a single and simple set of rules that will apply seamlessly over our union, so that businesses can operate across member states much more easily. Our entrepreneurs, the innovative companies, will be able to register a company in any member state within 48 hours, fully online. They will enjoy the same capital regime all across the European Union. And ultimately, we need a system where the companies can do business and raise financing seamlessly across Europe, just as easily as in uniform markets like the United States or China. If we get this right, and if we move fast enough, this will not only help EU companies grow, but it will attract investment from across the world. Which brings me to the second focus, investment and capital. We are now building the Savings and Investment Union. We need a large-scale, deep and liquid capital market that attracts a wide range of investors. And this will allow business to find the funding they need, including equity, at lower costs here in Europe. We have made proposals on market integration and supervision to ensure our financial market is more integrated. This covers trading, post-trading and asset management, as well as driving innovation and making our supervisory framework more efficient. This will help ensure that capital flows where it is needed, to scale-ups, to SMEs, to innovation, to industry. And the third priority is to build an interconnected and affordable energy market, a true energy union. Energy is a choke point for both companies and households. And just look at the dispersion of prices across European electricity hubs. Europe needs an energy blueprint that pulls together all the parts. This is our Affordable Energy Action Plan. We are, for example, massively investing in our energy security and independence with interconnectors and grids. This is for homegrown energies that we are trying to promote as much as possible, the nuclear and the renewables, to bring down prices and cut dependencies, to put an end to price volatility, manipulation and supply shocks. But now we have to speed up this transition, because homegrown, reliable, resilient and cheaper energy will drive our economic growth and deliver for Europeans and secure our independence. Ladies and gentlemen, whether on trade or business, capital or energy, Europe needs an urgency mindset. Our starting point is good. We are home to global champions in fields ranging from wind power to next-generation batteries, from aerospace to the industrial machines that are essential to build the chips and advanced weapons. Our companies are taking up AI at the same pace as their US peers. Europe is in the race for the key technologies of tomorrow. But as global competition gets ruthless, we must show real ambition, especially in those sectors vital for our independence. Take defense, for example. We have done more on defense in the last year than in decades before. We have started a surge in defense spending up to 800 billion euros till 2030. Member states are stepping up their investment at record level, and this has helped to triple the market value of European defense industry companies since January 2022. We now have 3 leading European defense tech startups that have reached unicorn valuation. They are working on AI-powered software and systems for battlefield intelligence, or on advanced dual-use and surveillance drones. So they are also driving innovation and investment in Europe's defense tech industrial base. All of this would have been unthinkable even a few years ago. This now only shows how economy and national security are more linked than ever, but also what we can do when Europeans have the will to match the ambition. So, ladies and gentlemen, this need for ambition is most important when it comes to the security of our continent. In just over a month, we will mark the 4th anniversary of Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. 4 years on, Russia shows no sign of abating, no sign of remorse, no sign of seeking peace. On the contrary, Russia is intensifying its attacks, killing civilians every day as we speak. Just last week, its bombing of Ukraine's energy infrastructure left millions facing darkness, cold, and water shortages. This must end. We all want peace for Ukraine. We recognize President Trump's role in pushing the peace process forward, and we will work very closely with the United States. And we all agree that, therefore, Ukraine must be in a position of strength to go to the negotiation table. And this is why we Europeans have decided to provide Ukraine with a loan of 90 billion euros for 2026 and 2027. With this support, we make sure that Ukraine can bolster its defense on the battlefield, strengthen its defense capabilities for a peace agreement, and keep basic services running. Above all, it reaffirms Europe's unwavering commitment to the security, the defense, and the European future of Ukraine. And in parallel, we decided to permanently immobilize the Russian assets, and that we reserve the right to make use of them. This should serve as a stark reminder to Russia and as a message to the world. Europe will always stand with Ukraine until there is a just and lasting peace. Ladies and gentlemen, I've spoken a lot today about European independence, on partnerships, on prosperity and security. So I would like to conclude with Greenland, an issue which cuts to the heart of all three of these imperatives. When it comes to the security of the Arctic region, Europe is fully committed. And we share the objectives of the United States in this regard. For instance, our EU member, Finland, one of the newest NATO members, is selling its first icebreakers to the United States. And this shows that we have the capability right here in the ice, so to speak. It shows that our northern NATO members have Arctic-ready forces right now. And above all, that Arctic security can only be achieved together. And this is why the proposed additional tariffs are a mistake, especially between long-standing allies. The European Union and the United States have agreed to a trade deal last July. And in politics, as in business, a deal is a deal. And when friends shake hands, it must mean something. Ladies and gentlemen, we consider the people of the United States not just our allies, but our friends. And plunging us into a downward spiral would only aid the very adversaries we are both so committed to keeping out of the strategic landscape. So our response will be unflinching, united, and proportional. But beyond this, we have to be strategic about how we approach this issue. And this is why we are working on a package to support Arctic security. First principle, full solidarity with Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark. The sovereignty and integrity of their territory is non-negotiable. Second, we're working on a massive European investment surge in Greenland. We will work with Greenland and Denmark hand in hand to see how we can further support the local economy and infrastructure. Third, we will work with the United States and all partners on wider Arctic security. This is clearly in our shared interest, and we will step up our investment. In particular, I believe we should use our defence spending surge on a European icebreaker capability and other equipment vital to the Arctic security. And fourth, in the same spirit, we need to work with all our regional partners to strengthen our common security. And this is why we will look at how to strengthen our security partnerships with partners such as the UK, Canada, Norway, Iceland, and others. Finally, I believe Europe needs to adjust to a new security architecture and realities that we are now facing. And this is why Europe is preparing its own security strategy, which we plan to publish later this year. And as part of this, we are upgrading our Arctic strategy too. And at the heart of this will be the fundamental principle: it is for sovereign people to decide their own future. Ladies and gentlemen, when I started preparing for this year's address, security in the High North was not the main theme. But in many ways, it feeds into the wider point I started with today. That Europe must speed up its push for independence, from security to economy, from defense to democracy, having the dialogue with our friends and partners, also if necessary with adversaries. The point is that the world has changed permanently and we need to change with it. And therefore, thank you and long live Europe.